group of suspects who they already had in connection with the release of these children, because people have said the time space is really small, but that's not the real story. The real story is that the court sentenced them to life imprisonment. However, the DSS is appealing. One would have thought, okay, that was a judgment in their favor and in the favor of Nigerians. But clearly, it did not quite carry the sentiments that a number of Nigerians felt should be meted out to those who have visited terror on the land. And the DSS is now appealing that judgment and taking it to a higher court, that what should actually be meted out is the death sentence. And that's what they're asking for. It's a different trajectory altogether. It's a new type of appeal altogether. What were your thoughts when you heard this particular story coming from the DSM, one of the foremost intelligence agencies in the nation?
In the country.
Yeah.
It simply underscores the seriousness of the federal government going forward, about its resolve to take the battle, to take the war to the terrorists, and make sure that enough deterrence is put in place so that anyone that be terrorist who wants to take the life of Nigerians, we now see that, unlike what was obtainable before, we're not going to treat you like our siblings, we're not going to treat you like prodigal children that should be forgiven, we're not interested in rehabilitating you. The full wrath of the law will be made to serve justice for the victims, for the country, and for the Nigerian people in general. This is a very commendable step. In fact, the fact that they got justice by way of life sentence, but I've said no, we want death penalty, simply underscores the seriousness of federal government going forward. And anybody that wants to die should continue terrorism and acts of terror across the country. And also said the message clearly that if you take one Nigerian life through acts of terrorism, you will pay for it your own life. I think if previous governments have been this resolute and firm, probably, as was the case in other jurisdictions, by now we would have taken the war on terror to a conclusive level where Nigeria would have returned to normalcy. You highlighted the fact that this seems to happen under the tenure or under the leadership of Tosi Ajayi. We still call him the new DSS DG, but like you said, he's been close to 3 years on that seat. Yes, if you know him very well and his antecedents, he's somebody I've described severally as a warlord in Yellow House. I think he's not just a thoroughbred professional, but I think he's a very committed and patriotic Nigerian heading a very sensitive government agency. I say this because people have headed this agency before, and we didn't see this level of resoluteness. But only in the 8 years of the previous administration, we didn't see this. The last time we saw something close to this was during a type of youngster when we saw the DSS swooping on a lot of these wannabe jihadists across the country and taking them out. We've seen a return to that era now with a much more vigor that is required now that Nigeria has become a playground for terrorists. So this is commendable, and of course we must commend the president too for backing the DSS to do this. Because if the political interference becomes overbearing, he can't do what he's doing. So, whatever credit we are giving to DSS must also go to the President and Commander-in-Chief. I say this because I have criticized the government severally for not doing this. And so for them to have decided to do this now, to underscore the gravity of the crime of terrorism, is what the DSS has done on behalf of the federal government, on behalf of the Nigerian people, to say, look, these people have taken lives and they must be made to pay for it. If you look at the argument of the DSS, the Oriire school abduction is linked to the group where these 2 gentlemen that have just been sentenced to life imprisonment are leaders. They were arrested some time ago during a DSS operation, and they've been going through interrogation. And from what I understand, the DSS carries out very clinical investigation with surgical precision, so that when they get to court, the evidence is overwhelming. It's just too overwhelming that the will of the, how do you call it now, the will of judiciary does not grind slowly in this instance. It is speedy trial, which is very commendable because we are in an emergency situation. Now, this same group abducted our children and their teachers, and slaughtered all of them in cold blood, in the most dastardly manner, because they wanted the release of this same gentleman. That was their demand. They did that because they wanted the release of the gentleman. So it is only right, it's only in compliance with natural justice that after the federal government managed to secure the release of these children and their teachers, the perpetrators and on whose behalf this kind of was perpetrated should not live to tell the story. So this is right, it is commendable, and I think again it underscores the seriousness of government going forward. We should pray that this is sustained across the board.
Well, we'll wait and see if the Court of Appeal. This is very interesting. That I still find it quite interesting. I wonder how this is going to play out in the Court of Appeal when the lawyers go before their lordships to say, yeah, we won the case, but we're not satisfied.
Yes.
So I wonder if that has ever happened, and it'll be interesting to get the perspective also of lawyers on this. We're not satisfied with the judgment that was given.
We want the maximum penalty.
We want the maximum penalty, and it will be very interesting to see how their lordships react. But then, I was also reading a very interesting article written by Premium Times in terms of the dilemma that Nigeria faces with capital punishment. Here we are now trying to sign up to treaties that ban or that prohibit capital punishment. There are religious organizations. I do know that the Catholic Church is one of them that has been asking, countries around the world to review their use of the capital punishment. That it shouldn't lie in the hands of human beings to take the lives of fellow human beings, etc., etc. And we have also seen here in this country how even when the capital punishment is prescribed and a judge reaches that conclusion of capital punishment, we've seen governors who have been reluctant to sign off on the capital punishment for the people who have been so convicted. And so you find those convicts in prison for, God knows how long. In some instances, some of them even become lords. We have found instances where, people who were convicted on the capital punishment find their faces on billboards in our country, being celebrated by members of their groups. Some of the things that we see in our country is mind-boggling. But these are things that we have seen. So, do you think that in this instance, I wonder whose prerogative it will be to sign off on this judgment? Because it is the federal government that has prosecuted this particular matter. Usually, we know that in cases of murder and robbery, it is a state government that prosecutes, and usually the responsibility of the governor of that state to sign off on it. In this instance, I don't know if you have an idea of whose responsibility it is to sign off on it, and should we really be caught in this dilemma given where we are as a country?
No, I don't think so, because we must prioritize our national security first and foremost, above any other consideration. So all treaties can wait, all other constitutions can wait. We are a country at war with itself, where we are losing more lives, perhaps much more than places that are officially at war. And to bring the situation under control, we need to deploy the full might of the state, and where judicial intervention is required, we need the maximum penalty for such offences in order to serve as deterrence against other wannabes. And so, in this case, Nigeria must now prioritize its national security first and foremost. Nigeria must exist first. We can begin to sign treaties. So, if you continue to toe this line, and people have the hope that when they go out and kill people in tens and hundreds and thousands, there's a possibility that they will not die. They'll be in prison and be fed all their lives. And by the time will come that they might even be given some kind of pardon under provincial clemency. It will encourage them to continue to do that. And Nigeria might not exist or live to regret this story. So for me, we must consider Nigeria's national interests first above all other considerations. And all authorities from the state to the federal government are responsible for carrying out, for executing judicial interventions that may have pronounced the maximum penalty for offences after conviction, must, without wasting time at all, sign the relevant warrant for the execution. You know why? Again, we are at war. It becomes a sacred duty on elected officials, particularly governors and the president, to at this time act as war commanders, as commanders-in-chief in such a situation by speedily executing anybody that has been found guilty and convicted along this line, so as to show clearly that government is not just serious, but has demonstrated seriousness. I'll give you a parallel example. Look, Saudi Arabia 1978, there was a siege on the Grand Mosque of Mecca by people that have similar orientation with the Lakurawas and the Boko Harams of this world. Those who wanted to change the status quo of Saudi Arabia, who felt Saudi Arabia was not Islamic enough. So they plotted for many years undetected, and then they seized the Grand Mosque during the Hajj season in 1978. It was a serious standoff. After trying to get them to release the hostage, because foreign nationals were held hostage in the Grand Mosque, and they refused, the government of Saudi Arabia evacuated Mecca and its environs for 3 weeks, invaded the mosque, along with collateral damages, were able to neutralize the assailants, and their leaders were arrested, tried, and hanged publicly. And since 1978, we've not had any successful plot of such nature in Saudi Arabia till today. We must take that example, because we are suffering something similar, but even in multiple folds that happened in Saudi Arabia. In the case of Saudi Arabia and the 1978 siege on the mosque, it was one group and one ideology. In Nigeria today, we can't count the number of jihadi groups that are operating in this country. We can't count it. So please, we must consider Nigerian national interest and justice for the victims. In the United States of America, up till today, there are still some states that still uphold the death penalty. And usually, when someone is to be executed for say murder, the family members of the victim come there to witness so that they can get closure that the state has provided justice for their loved ones and for themselves. The Nigerian state must commence in earnest to provide justice for us, so that those who want to do this will see that you will die if you do this. And those of us that have been victims will also be rest assured that the government indeed is there for us. It's a constitutional matter. They all swore to uphold the Constitution. And the primary responsibility of government under the Constitution is position of security and welfare. Right? So in furtherance of national security, this must be done, this must be executed, and this must be sustained. The death penalty for terrorism must be sustained in Nigeria.
I know that Ayo might want to come in on this conversation. What I don't know is if she wants to continue this line, if she wants to bring another topic. But Ayo, over to you.
I think if we are to continue on this particular conversation, we'll be calling for a symposium, because the issues are just endless. Because you remember, we are also still talking about the state police. Maybe I should just take you on that one very, very quickly before we go on, Mr. Dahiru. We're still talking about the state police initiative. Governors are not, they don't have that power because the law is not active. Now, with an active state police law, where we have state police at the subnational level, help us understand how this will play out, because some of the issues will still arise. The arrests are still going to be made along this particular line and all of that. We understand the federal level. The states, will they be able to do exactly the same thing according to the proposition that you're making now, especially given the conversation that's ongoing? Add to that the colors or the coloration of, or rather political coloration given to some of these issues from time to time. How do you see that being sustained? I mean, it is understood your position of the need for that capital punishment. But how about the political interference that sometimes bends, if I can use that term, such decisions?
Okay, let me start with the political decisions sometimes that might bend such decisions, like you rightly pointed out. It should be discouraged. You see, we should not politicize national security, because we are all victims. And Nigeria may not survive it for so long. We've seen the politicization of national security for 8 years under the Buhari administration. I've said it severally, and without apologies, that look, there was a heightened sectionalism under that country that saw politicization of national security to the point where it became monstrous, and this government is now trying to combat it. So this government must, as much as possible, depart from that. Allow the professionals, the intelligence community, the armed services to lead while the commander-in-chief provides leadership. There should be no political consideration. What is required is to restore order and normalcy, so that Nigeria can function as a country under law, where law and order is upheld without fear of favor on the basis of ethnicity, religion, or partisanship. Now, on the issue of state police, That itself is also another commendable step by the federal government. And what we not understand is that by initiating the establishment of state police by the Tinubu administration, President Tinubu can be said to have taken the first step towards committing class suicide. I said it because there's no president before him that ever agreed to concede that power of policing to subnational levels. No president before him even considered it at all. But the fact that the state police creation itself is going via an executive bill to the legislature and is being guided by the president and the executive arm of government shows that for the first time in many years, we have seen a president that is trying to prioritize national interest over and above personal or partisan interest, and that will be commendable again, because for critics like us who criticize government, it is for them to do the right thing, and when they do the right thing, we have a duty to commend them so that they can know that when you do the right thing and get commendation, it is more sustainable that way to continue to do the right thing. Now, Nigeria is a country of over 100,000 square kilometers of landmass and a population of about 200 million, with a multidimensional security challenge confronting this country. It is quite clear that federal arsenals, federal assets, federal manpower, federal resources, as we speak, are no longer able to contain the rising challenges of insecurity. Combined in numbers, our armed forces, including defense and internal security agencies, are less than 1 million in terms of staff strength, far less than 1 million. And the federal government too, it's very difficult to actually man the entire country on its own. So it is very much in order that the power of policing has been devolved to the state, along with other things. Do not forget that before now, the state governments have their own judiciaries, and there are state laws, and there are federal laws. And you also have the states now giving the power to run correctional facilities. So with state police coming in, I think it's just an icing on the cake to further make our federation strengthened and balanced. One way that the state policing initiative can help national security is the increase in numbers. By the time the state governments across the states of the federation recruit people, men and officers and men into their police force, men and women, the young and the old, into their respective police force, it will boost the number of armed service personnel across the country. And also it would enable state governors to live up to their reputation or their designation in the constitution as chief security officers of the state, where we can now hold individual governors responsible to some extent for security within their jurisprudence, within their jurisdiction, I mean. Therefore, this is a very good initiative. And when it comes to federal crimes, the federal policing system will always collaborate with the state policing system to unravel and tackle federal crime. So you still have a situation where the DSS, the federal police, the NDLEA, the immigration, we still have collaborative effort with state policing or local police authorities in combating crime. And when it's a federal crime, for instance, the federal police agency will simply take it up to for judicial intervention. If it's a state crime, it remains in the state. So there will be collaboration. And I think the bill that is presented to the National Assembly takes care of these areas of collaboration so that we can have a smooth takeoff of the state policing system. The only thing we can do now, people, is to appeal to the conscience of our governors. We say, look, please, do not make a mess of this initiative as you have made of so many other.
What one can say about that, my apologies, Mr. Dairo, for butting in. I think what one can say is, I mean, you already made it clear. Once the issue becomes law, the sentiments of this collusion, I think, might be moderated. And that the issues are quite clear, stacked up. But let me quickly go to another issue. And I think I'm going to be merging a couple of things together. The fake agency issue is still thriving. It's still on the front burner. EFCC, I beg your pardon, ICPC has an assignment on that. But ICPC has also done some investigation that exposed another gap, maybe similar to that of the fake agency that we now, as we now call it. 908 ghost workers in the federal civil service, and if you find out the list of agencies that are involved here, Nigeria Police Force, in the Nigeria Police Force, the ICPC flagged 570 names. Water Resources Authority suspected 80 ghost workers, 56 in the Federal Ministry of Works, Foreign Affairs Ministry, 24 Ministry of Defense, 19, on and on and on and on like that. In both instances, clearly there are systemic gaps. How long it has been for, that's another thing altogether. Because for anyone to include the names of anyone at all in the IP system, which of course many people have said has its gaps, there have to be certain individuals who have the power to do so. What are your thoughts on this? What are we missing? And what are your expectations of the findings when the ICPC report is out on both issues?
Okay, well, one thing we must understand is that the way Nigeria is configured, Nigeria's security units are structured along ethnogeographic fault lines, which in turn has given rise to a political process that is heavily dependent on identity of ethnicity and religion. And so the leadership recruitment process in Nigeria is heavily dependent on these two sentiments. And unfortunately for us, the reward system, and this is very important for us to take note of, the reward system for identity politics is corruption. They call it petroleum, but it is corruption. And that's why in Nigeria, corruption is cultural, it is religious, and administered by government. And ICPC and EFCC cannot conclusively tackle corruption in Nigeria. It will require a rerouting of our political process, a reconfiguration of the state itself for such corrupt practices that rear its head once in a while and are discovered for it to be conclusively tackled. I say this because for as long as Nigeria has existed, we've been battling with the issues of ghost workers, both at the center and federal level. And no amount of technology has been able to help us tackle these issues. Nigeria is the only country that defies the law of gravity when it comes to functionality of government affairs and day-to-day running of government administration. Nigeria is the only country because the people involved, the human factor, is such that corruption is cultural in nature in Nigeria. Somebody somewhere may have been appointed into a position, and that phenomenon of prebendalism that characterizes political officials in Nigeria is such that an average Nigerian appointed or elected public official has a sense of entitlement over his area of responsibility. He feels that responsibility that is being given is going to benefit and extract from for himself and his own section of the country. This is the grand reason for some of these things we are seeing. And we'll continue to see all of these things, ranging from corruption, economic and financial crimes, ghost workers, to even ghost agencies. As you have seen in the case of the current saga going on, is it the FCP or what you call it? These are the causative factors. And the point is, you'll be surprised to hear that nobody might be brought to justice for this act. Because somewhere, somehow, these things satisfy certain cultural tendencies that is corruption in nature, but is politically relevant. So even the Nigerian police force, for instance, that's supposed to be the harbinger of law and order, that's supposed to be above all like Caesar's wife, is not from this corruption of ghost worker syndrome. So it's important for us to begin to take a deeper look at how the Nigerian state is configured. Otherwise, we will keep having this conversation from time to time, and it will get worse. So we're now having a situation that has escalated from having ghost workers to having entirely ghost agencies, with somebody putting the face to it and insisting that his agency is actually in order and has been witch-hunted. That's the story of Nigeria. I don't know what will happen next. Maybe we'll have a ghost state and ghost local government in the future if nothing is done about this.
To that, Mr. Dairu, but very quickly before Malcolm takes over, just yesterday, the ICPC may have kind of diagnosed one of the reasons that these things are able to happen. For instance, a director with the ICPC revealed yesterday that one of the things that they have found out in the ICPC from just 3 agencies that they investigated, found out that the federal character law, that is the federal character principle that's supposed to be instilled in the recruitment processes, that a good number of agencies, particularly the ones that they investigated, have violated, that rule, that compliance, federal character compliance has been faulted by the ICPC. Now, if we have a rule, such a rule that is supposed to guide employment, and those things aren't happening, I don't know where do we want to lay the blame right here now? Because even in the office of the head of civil service or civil service commission, they have ghost workers there.
Look, okay, give a typical example of the issue of violation of federal character. Right now, you have somebody who's contested to be the governor of Gombe State. His name is Sheikh Isa Ali Pantami. He wants to be the governor of Gombe State. And before now, he has held positions at the federal level. He was DG NITDA and he was Minister of Communications. Part of the things he's using to campaign is that he influenced, take note of the word, influenced over 700 plus jobs and projects to Gombe State when he was heading these two ministries and departments. Influenced. Influence peddling is a corrupt practice. And in influencing this, I looked at somebody published the list of the projects and jobs indeed. And I discovered that my state, for instance, didn't have as much as Gombe State. I'm sure your state, more state too, may not have had as much. Because you don't have the privilege of having a minister for communications or DG of NITDA. So definitely, federal character was violated in the process of him influencing these things for his state. And today he's running on that to be governor. And he's very popular in the state. People see him as a typical success story of somebody who went to Abuja and brought something back home. So because of this prevalence in tribalism, it is even difficult for state institutions to prosecute such offenses. It's almost impossible. Because almost everybody is involved. Probably if you probe ICPC too, you might also discover violation, you may discover violation of the federal character by some appointed authorities within the agency who must also take something home where they come from, where they are appointed. So this level of corruption in Nigeria is a cultural problem that is political in nature. And as a people, we must come together to roll back the wheels of identity politics, replace it with true liberal politics that will substitute corruption for good governance as a reward system. In fact, even the Federal Character Commission has not been free of corrupt practices allegations. You remember a case of one of the heads of that agency that was said to be selling jobs at a premium. So, look, everybody simply is feasting from wherever they find themselves, including in agencies that are supposed to fight corruption in this country and ensure equity, fairness, and justice.
You know, sometimes when you just sit and you hear stories as a journalist or even as a Nigerian, most Nigerians, have the privilege of being able to just go about their duties. Journalists, on the other hand, this is the job that we have taken. We have a front row, seat to every conversation. And you're sometimes wondering, what sort of country are we? Have we really had a conversation on the kind of country that we really want to have?
Now.
What exactly is this how to behave? Everybody just does anything that they like, without consequences. And as you spoke about, you talked about how we have ghost workers, and not only do we have ghost workers, now we're having ghost agencies.
And we have a ghost
only God knows what we'll graduate to next time. But this particular ghost agency or this ghost commission, as the case might be, is something that has really boggled many, worried many Nigerians, so to speak. And I know that the president has asked the ICPC to investigate as well. 30 days they were given. I don't know if you are still keeping count. We'll be relying on him to do so. 30 days they were given by the president this month as well to make sure that they're able to fish out what exactly went wrong, how this was possible. But it appears that the National Assembly is not just, let me be more specific, the House of Representatives, because the Senate has shot the idea down. But the House of Representatives says, that they are going to investigate this matter, and they have started. The Accountant General of the Federation was before members of the National Assembly yesterday, members of the House of Reps specifically, and they say that, or he said that no government funds were released to the purported Presidential Economic Advisory Council despite requests for funding because there was no budgetary provision. Well, I don't know, that will wait to be seen. What the House of Reps is asking now is that the IGP produce this man, before them, so that they can also ask, can ask him questions. Well, what do you make of the intervention of the House of Reps? Because one would think that when the president has asked that the ICPC investigate and come up with a report within a certain time frame, that should be sufficient. Why do you think it is important for the National Assembly to also look into this matter?
Well, to bring the matters to the open, really. Because a lot of suspicion has gone into this matter. In fact, the Nigerians are saying that ICPC cannot be trusted to carry out this investigation, and they're calling for an independent probe. And we try to tell people that, look, ICPC cannot be more independent than it is by statute.
Independent? It's in its name.
It's its name. As a matter of fact, all agencies of government are by statute supposed to be independent. But of course, we know we have political interference, fine, but they are independent. So what you can ask for in the alternative is an open probe, as we have seen in the House of Reps. And I think it's a healthy one. At least those of us outside that are not part of the ICPC probe are getting to see and try to make sense of the nonsense that has just happened in this situation. So I hope and pray that the IGP of police will release the young man to come to the house. Let us hear the side of the story. Let him come and substantiate what the allegations he's made. Because I still feel that from all the document circulation, he's not been able to substantiate his own allegations against the chief of staff, for example. So he needs to come now and substantiate it. Bring anything that links you to him. Because he is insisting that the evidence is not fake.
Is this going to be for the court of public opinion?
I think it helps the case even in court. Even though the DSS had concluded their own investigation between August last year, when the chief of staff reported this matter to them, and before he was slated to be arraigned in court sometime within the outgoing month. But it's a matter of public interest, because this is one of a kind. I mean, we've not seen this scale. I mean, this is an all new, would I say an all new high, an all new low? I don't know how to describe it, but this is something that is very novel. And so it's important that we have some public inquest into it to understand how these things happen. And so far, the information we have been getting from the Accountant General's office, the Budget office, have been able to shed some light on what looks to be like a very mysterious issue. Mm-hmm. So I want to urge the IGP of police, despite the fact that this man has the case in court, let him come and state the same thing is likely going to take to court. If you have any defense, let him bring it to the public space and take him to court. There's nothing wrong with it. If you are accused, for instance, of a crime and you have your own defense, you can simply put it out in the media for people to see your side of the story before going to court. Bring whatever evidence you have or materials you have to show. Mm-hmm. And you didn't force yourself on this agency that were duly appointed by the appointing authority. Mm-hmm. And if you have a relationship or interactions with the chief of staff to the extent that can establish a prima facie case against him of bribery, also present whatever it is you have, no matter how little or trivial, present it. Let the public be able to judge. And takes him to court, so that's wrong.
Because perception is actually very important.
It's very important. Very, very important.
Mr. Machidi, we can go on. Something also happened in the security sector. We understand the president has created new divisions for the Nigerian army, and hopefully that should help improve
troop strength, manpower, personnel, and materials. We also want to seek for more funding for even the existing formations. Mm-hmm. In terms of welfare for personnel, our troops are poorly paid, very poorly paid compared to other countries. An example is the fact that an entry-level rank and file soldier in the US, for instance, takes home annually over $24,000. If you compare that to their counterparts in Nigeria, I don't think it's not even to the comparison. So what that tells you is that somebody must be motivated enough to be able to put his life on the line for the Nigerian people, as they are doing now, and also improve on their equipment and other personnel. But again, it is commendable that the president are taking this step to increase the might of the state to contain insurgency, to contain insecurity, to contain terrorism. Now, for the past few weeks, since the Oriire massacre happened, I've not heard of non-kinetic approach to security. Something I don't like to hear at all. I've not heard about rehabilitation or the need to dialogue. So it tells me that the president may have taken a decision now to focus on his job as commander-in-chief by doing all that he can, including the state police formation the expansion of the armed forces, the permission to recruit, what do you call them now, forest guard by state governments, all of this, it tells me that the president is now acting as the commander-in-chief that is under emergency rule. So that is quite commendable. And we hope and pray that this will be sustained and that the Oriire experience will be replicated across the country, and that preventive measures will be put in place to make sure that Nigeria defeats terror, defeats abductions, defeats banditry once and for all.
If it's a national prayer, I'm certainly saying amen to that. I have to thank you very much for coming on Sunrise Daily this morning. Majid Dahiru is a technical member of the Lookster Leadership Foundation, and he's been speaking out to us on a number of issues that have come up within our policy. Thank you once more for coming on Sunrise Daily. We'll take a break now. When we come back, we'll be focusing squarely on politics, particularly as it affects River State. Please stay with us.